Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 67 of Breaking Step. Okay, that's a scene I need to add at some point. The sense of the air changed well before Tibs saw the lake, even before he stepped past the last building that was part of Craggle Rock proper. They had thinned until he walked on grass instead of packed earth, and looking on each side, the buildings were all a good 5 and 0 paces away, following the contour of the lake, as if the builders understood that there was something that couldn't be disturbed about the area, or someone was making sure the lake was protected. The guild, sorcerers who also had plans to buy it and build an academy over it. You should ask Daran if anyone owned it already. As with many things relating to the elements, Tips couldn't find a word that defined what the change felt like as he approached the people out by the shore. The closest one he had was wet. The air wasn't wet. There was no more water essence in it than in the part of the town he'd walked out of. But this wetness he sensed increased as he stepped closer. This wetness he sensed as he stepped closer seemed to feel more of what he sensed the closer he was as he approached. Only a few of the people standing or sitting by the shore were runners, or nobles with elements, or knights with the same. He still wasn't sure how to think of them. Fewer had water as their element, but unlike the others, who seemed to be there simply to enjoy the calm, they were taking advantage of the closeness to the element that the wetness represented. The runners and nobles sat, looking like they were deep in thought, pulling essence of them. One of the nobles sat in water, with their robes billowing on the surface. The group of knights was on one knee by the water, head bowed. There was something reverential in the position Tibbs thought would amuse water. The one thing they all shared was that they looked at peace. They were at ease, water soothing their worries for a short time. A look back confirmed the building arch around the lake. He'd thought that was that what he'd thought that what okay, this is going to be a different paragraph. He thought that what had kept merchants from taking up their shops around the corruption pool had been the smell. But maybe there was something about the closeness of the element that pushed townsfolk not to establish themselves there. He sat on the sandy shore next to a water knight who nodded in acknowledgement before closing her eyes again and let water quiet his worries. He could do with peace. The, incre- the increase in out of town runners had brought an increase in troublemakers who targeted any establishment that had things they could pocket or coins to steal. It had caused Irdian to increase the number of guards patrolling the street, and while Tibbs did his best to tell himself Merchant Row wasn't targeted by them any more than anywhere than elsewhere, he couldn't help feeling like the number of Irdian guards were larger among his street, impeding his people doing their job. He breathed and tried to let the bubbling annoyance flow away, let water wash it out of him. Of course, the increase in Irdian guards had led to some of the merchant wanting to renegotiate the contract. If Tibbs didn't have to do as much of the work to keep them safe, why should they pay him as they did? He considered tearing them up, letting them go back to depending on the guards for their protection, letting them be reminded how that had gone before. He breathed, he breathed and attempted to let water douse his mounting anger. He couldn't tell if it was the oneness he practiced or how much of the essence he had in him. But water didn't seem to soothe him as much as he remembered her doing before. Tibs stared at the sword through his chest that pinned him to the wall, then the self-satisfied smirk on the woman's face who held it. He'd had to bring in his sense of how many people there were. Wait, what? He'd had to bring in his sense because of how many people there were. So many with elements pushing and so many with elements pushing and pulling their essence about, practicing the basics of what they could now do, and it was distracting. He hadn't pulled it in so much he no longer sensed anyone, and he had sensed her running, only he had dismissed her, someone's guard in a hurry to do their bidding, he'd decided by the sword at her hip. Even that she'd been heading in his direction hadn't fully registered until she had shoved him into the alley. Then the sword when it was in through his heart, and he was pinned. If metal could still hurt him, he would be dead. What is your problem? He demanded in annoyance, forming a bubble around them to keep sounds from leaving. Brown hair, shorn short, amber eyes, worker's clothes. Nothing about her was familiar. She frowned at him, looked at the sword, and tried to twist it, but the wall held it as much as it held Tibs. If he let go of the annoyance, her confusion could be amusing. I will get the bounty, she replied. Her accent was familiar, but Tibs couldn't place it. What bounty? And will you stop shaking the sword? You're making the rip in my shirt larger. Do you have any idea how much time ending this is going to cost me? Like, I'm not busy enough already? He glanced at the wall, trying to see if the vest was also cut, then realized the absurdity of the motion. Maybe Dawn was right. He should pay a seamstress to do the work. Maybe buy more shirts and vests, so he wouldn't have to worry about how long it might take to get it back. He had coins, after all. He should spread them around. Someone is desperate for you to be dead. Her accent thickened as she snarled, I will get the fortune. She pulled a knife, but Tibs caught her hand before she added a hole to his clothing. What fortune? Great. Who else could want him dead? He hadn't tried to piss off anyone, but nobles were known to go to extreme to avenge any perceived slight. The one held on your head. She pulled, but he had earth locking his grip in place. Why are you not dead? She yelled. Month watching and planning, watching other fail. Wait until you grow lax. I am too fast. You don't defend. She dared at him. Die. He stared back at her. His head had been the proof needed to be paid by the brokerage. If she'd been here for months, that meant well before he'd destroyed the contracts. Archer had said there would be chaos, and Tibs had figured anyone hunting him for the fortune would find out about it and leave him be. After all, there had been no attempt since he'd returned. He looked at the sword in his chest. He'd assumed this trouble was finally over. Tibs pushed her away, and she nearly fell as he pulled the sword out. I'm a runner. The dungeon is always trying to kill me. This isn't going to do it. He considered dissolving it to impress on her the futility of what she'd tried to do. Instead, he planted it in the ground. He didn't need stories of what he could do floating about. There were already enough for the bards to make use of. Don't, he told her as she stepped forward, knife pointed at him. I'm just annoyed right now, and I don't want you dead. Don't get me angry. I get you dead. She took another step, and the next was stopped by ice encasing her foot. Then both of them. They won't be able to pay you, he stated, watching her struggle to free herself. She screamed and pulled until she was left panting. Did you get the bounty from the brokerage? No, she said, the word glowing as bright as the anger in her eyes. They were attacked. He stepped closer and cut her hand, taking the knife out of it and dropping it to the ground. What I heard is that the thief managed to burn the contracts before they killed him. There are also rumors all those coins they were supposed to use to pay you have been stolen. Lies. You tried to save your skin. If that's all I cared about, there's a sword here I can shove through your chest, and we can find out if you'll survive that as easily as I did. He sighed. Look, I'm already busy enough. The ice is going to take a while to melt. When you're free, go to the brokerage and find out what happened to the contract. He turned and walked away. Or don't. But if you're planning on trying this again, remember what happened here and that I'm not going to be in this good of a mood if you get the drop on me a second time. Hello. Tibbs had a nice knife in his hand before he was done looking up from the vest he was mending. The shirt had been quicker, but his vest was leather. Clara smiled as she motioned to the knife and vest. Had a rough day? What are you doing here? He asked, letting the knife dissipate. I mean, he took a breath to calm himself and calmed himself. You weren't among the clerics when they arrived, so I thought they weren't going to let you come back as punishment for helping us when you were told to go hide. Okay, when you weren't as punishment when for I need for not hiding when you were told to and helping us against Sebastian. Yes, I know, typos are plenty. You weren't among the clerics. Where's my cursor? There you are. You weren't among the clerics when they arrived, so I thought they weren't going to let you come back as punishment for not hiding when you were told to and helping us against Sebastian. She sighed. It was finally agreed that I did what purity demanded of me, and nothing more by those who judge my action. It was not a fast decision, which is why I have been here. Which is why I have not been here sooner. Do you have a team? Tibbs asked as Khrushchev placed a tankard before her. Welcome back, Clara. This is a thank you from everyone you saved, the server said. If you are hungry, I can bring you food. Her pale skin turned pink. I could eat. She stared at the tankard, then sipped it. I have a team. We have our run in 3 days. Shouldn't you be with them, then? Figuring out the team dynamics? They have already said what they expect of me, how they will keep me safe. She hesitated. I don't want to wait for one of them to be hurt or near death before helping. I have seen too much death already. I want... She slid the tankard back and forth. Could you introduce me to your cleric? You want to speak with Comdar? He asked cautiously. Kara had the least shadows within her of anyone he'd seen. Clara had the least shadows within her of anyone he'd seen, but he was wary of anyone from Purity asking to speak with someone they loudly claimed was a charlatan and needed to be put to death. She shook her head. I want him to train me in the use of the staff. You want to fight? This time it was surprise that flavored the question. Doesn't that go against what you're supposed to do? She looked at the tankard. Purity demand I work hard to save others, devote myself to it. But the siege, then Sebastian's assault, showed me that preventing others from being hurt can be more effective than healing the injuries they might gain when it comes to keeping them alive. Won't that get you in trouble with your superiors? The smile was small. I have elected to become a runner. I am no longer under the supervision of those who prefer comfortable preaching. I am under Purity's direct command. Purity does not care how I apply myself to the work, so long as I am diligent in it. Tibs considered her words, the lack of light on them, while Khrushchev placed 2 plates on the table. I can't promise Kumdar will want to help you, but I'll explain what you want and vouch for you. How is she? Tibs asked as they reached the top of the steps. She is obstinate, Kumdar replied darkly. Nothing I will do causes her to change her mind. Regardless of how often I strike her down to show how ill-suited to fighting one of her ilk is, she stands and readies for me. I utterly despise her, he snarled. Good to know someone can get under your skin, Jekyll said. Then, we're good. To the cleric by the door before she stepped forward to look them over. They were inside before the guards reacted. She was the cleric who helped us with Sebastian's assault, wasn't she? Dunn asked. Even for a cleric, she was odd. And have you had the honor of interacting with many of them? Kumdar asked defiantly. My family used to have money, the soldier replied, barely on this side of snapping at the cleric. So many is too strong a word, but I have met some when one of my relatives needed their help. All clerics are strange, Jekyll stated, placing a hand on the doorway. Tibbs looked at Kumdar as he sensed the fighter unlocking it. He is not incorrect. The closeness one of us will share with our element affects us more than others. We all develop oddities. The doorway opened and they stepped through. All right, dungeon, this is it. We're beating your boss room, he motioned ahead. Tibbs, how about you make sure it's playing fair and there's still a way to reach the rooms? Oh, like I'm the cheater here, Ganny replied. You're the one always pulling one trick or another. You might as well be a rogue for all the ways. All the ways you're always cheating. Eh. No. For the ways you're always cheating. You got Ganny angry, Tibbs said, stepping to the edge of the hallway. Good. Ganny rubbed his hands together. I love going up against someone angry. And that concludes chapter 67 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, as well as the others in the series, they're up for free on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of that and support me in the process, my Patreon is about 20 chapters ahead. And if you're looking to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.